We are going to start with, hello Julie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. Despite some technical entertainment that we'll get as we go through this, I apologize for that. I'm an idiot. So to start off with, would you mind telling everybody a little bit about yourself for those that don't know who Julie is? Can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that photo with the crown. That's pretty awesome. As you said, I'm Julie Joyce, and I own LinkFish Media. That's a link building company. We do a little more than links, but I know we'll talk about that later, but that's kind of what we're known for. So I started working with links about 2007, I think. My husband had started LinkFish, and I was doing some technical SEO at the time. So I do a lot of writing about links. I've done a few sessions on links, but basically that's my thing is links.
Your thing is links, and that's why we gave you the title of Queen of Links. During this. And the reason why I gave you the title Queen of Links is I thought it would annoy you. So
And it did.
it did. Well, yeah, you know the way I work. And I also thought adding a large, slightly stretched photo of you with a fake crown on was also worth my effort. So
Yes.
throw that one in.
Thank you.
So could you tell us a little bit about LinkFish? And I know that you as LinkFish as a company specializes in links, but also you specialize in the slightly more, or have specialized in the slightly more difficult end of the link building market today as well, haven't you?
Yes, we do. Mainly, we do a lot of paid links. We do a lot of no-followed paid links and things like that, some sponsored posts. What we mainly don't do, we don't do broken link building, which I know a lot of people specialize in, and we don't tend to do the links like resource page links. So, those are things that people do come to us for, but just we've never really done them. So mainly what we do is just do outreach and go after links. I wish I could make it sound a little more exciting, but that's what we've always done. And I do some link auditing. We probably do a couple of link audits every month. And those are for people that might have been penalized, they might not have. We don't really do any cleanup because, we'll do the disavowing and things like that. I do consulting, so I have some monthly consulting clients that, it might be link building, advising them or looking over what their team does, or it could just be, basic SEO consulting. And I do SEO audits as well. And I'm also doing some PPC work, which was one of the first things I got started with. So that's a client I've had for over 10 years, I think.
Right.
And, I keep hoping they will do links at some point. But they seem happy with PPC, and I really like being able to do something that's completely different, from link building.
Okay. And in terms of in terms of how much of the link building spectrum, so you're mainly doing paid link insertion and the outreach side of things. But do you actually, as a part of a whole link building strategy, are you also getting involved in any of the stuff around competitive link building, around all of the extra bits that go around that?
We do sometimes, but I'd like to do more, I should say. I think because we've got a reputation for something very specific, and that seems to be paid link building. So, most of the clients we get know what, they've heard we do, and they want something specific.
Okay.
And they might have, SEOs, they might even have another link team doing something else. So, it's the kind of stuff I like to do, and we recently did some competitive analysis as a client wanted us to do that and basically say, who's linking to these guys? Can we get some to start with? And we did that. But for the most part, it's not that. It's just, exactly what I said. It's just, people come to us for something very specific usually.
Okay. And in terms of how did you get into link building? Because your background isn't a marketing background as far as I'm aware, is it? It's
No.
slightly more technical than that.
Right. I graduated with physical anthropology and English degrees, and not much you could do with that. So I went back to school and I did social work, which it was just not my thing. But I got to work with people that had different disabilities, and I saw how they were using technology, and that really fascinated me. So I went back to school to learn how to program and learned how I did C++ and ASP and got a job as a programmer, and that. I programmed for a year or two before they had a vacancy on the SEO team, And because I was a programmer, they'd also asked me to do some cloaking. So I worked with a lot of the cloaking stuff that we did. And then someone found out I had an English degree, and they thought, well, we need somebody that can write some content, and do something technical. So that's kind of how I got dragged in. That was
Right.
just a technical SEO, but at the time there had been three of us, and then there was just me.
Okay.
So I kind of had to do it all that's why I had PPC and technical SEO, everything basically. So I got to learn a lot of things like that. So the link building didn't come till much later. And as I said, my husband started the company when we worked doing some SEO as consultants for a company in London. And they needed links, so he kind of took that on, and I was doing technical project management. And then it just got to the point where it kind of became a conflict of interest to basically have a consultant who also had his own company doing things, and people were asking us to do links for different companies. So it just kind of worked out that I ended up, we parted ways with that company and just took them on as a client. And then I kind of had to learn links. It was just nothing that interested me at all at the time. And, just kind of, again, got really thrown into it. So I didn't really choose it, but it has been something that I joke about it being really boring and tedious, but it's kept my interest for 10 years. So that's actually pretty good for me.
Yeah. It's a constantly changing challenge, isn't it?
Right. It is, definitely.
And I think you said that links isn't all that LinkFish do, but LinkFish primarily is known for, and people come to you because of the expertise that you've got in a particular part of that discipline.
Right, right. We do get a few people that, they might be looking for link building companies, but they also need something else. And that's how we might do some consulting or, some just anything different. But it is mainly links.
Yeah, but you're not gone the traditional route of building an agency where you're doing the full SEO discipline as part of the general contract. Are you? People come to you
No.
for a reason.
Right, they do. And we used to be a lot bigger, and we had middle management, and it was just, I was actually very miserable when we had it like that. And now we're much smaller, so we don't have the capacity to do anything big like that. So any consulting jobs, we take on has to be something that I can manage personally.
Okay. And over the years, because I mean, you say you've done this for quite a long time now. I mean, how have you seen the main signal of links changing, if you will?
Um, the main thing, I guess, is that, as you probably know, years ago, you could rank a site very easily by just throwing a ton of links at it. You didn't really have to do very much. You could build 10 links with exact match anchors, and it would rank really well. And, I know that can still work today because, all the things that people say don't work actually still work in some cases. But I think it's gotten much harder. And when I do competitive analysis, used to be that I might look and you could tell why somebody was ranking. Lots of times you could look at their link profile and see that, the number one result has the most links, and then the second one has the second most links. But that doesn't seem to be true anymore. And when I start looking at link profiles of people ranking really well, they might be really small now. I mean, somebody might have like 30 linking domains, and that's it. But, the profile looks a lot cleaner. So I think it's just maybe quality's gotten much more important than quantity. And after Penguin,
Sorry, in terms of how much do you think that change in as you know, my background is in higher volume link stuff, which is how you end up co-founding a product to try and solve the problems that caused. We are where we are. I feel I've cleaned up quite a lot now. So in terms of not being able to look at the total volume and get an indication on that, do you think that's down partially to Google not counting so many of the links that we see out on the internet now, or is it down to them only trusting those links that really matter?
that is a very good question. And I don't have any evidence to back up an opinion on that. I would hope that maybe they're getting a little bit smarter. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell. We've been disavowing links for a while now, and then you have the Penguin, and I really just don't know. I would like to say, that maybe they're just better at recognizing good links, but, I don't know that their idea of a good link is my idea of a good link. You and I might differ on what makes a good link, so I truly don't know. I would love to see somebody test something like that. I don't know if there's a way, but I have no evidence.
We've seen a huge amount of the sort of feedback that Google gives you when they deny a re-inclusion request when somebody's been
Right,
underpaid.
that's very true.
And that data gives me a very firm belief that Google don't really know what a good link or a bad link is in a lot of cases.
Okay.
Um, but
They
so
probably don't, because how can they tell? I mean, I've always thought that I don't think they can look at a link and tell that somebody paid for it unless it's done very poorly.
yeah,
I just don't know that, they can't tell what you're doing half the time. I think they want you to think they can, but
yes,
so
yeah,
you're probably right. And as you say, you probably do have a lot of data that shows that, because I have had clients that had small link profiles, but they got, penalized. They disavowed, they did a lot of cleanup and had to go through loads of resubmission. And Google kept saying, no, you still have bad links.
mm.
And I thought we kind of picked the profile clean of all the bad links, but they were still saying it. So you're probably right. They probably don't have a clue.
Well, so all part of the entertainment. So how has that effectively changed the approach that you have to it? Because and how do you evaluate? Given that we understand that Google is a bit patchy in the way that they potentially determine good and bad. How does that change
Right.
your view on how to evaluate that?
I think we've just gotten much more selective. And before, I kind of, it goes back to when I was saying we had a lot more link builders. We had maybe 40 at one time, and we had middle management. And the middle managers they didn't have an SEO background. So I kind of had to trust them to know what a good link was, and they had to kind of trust the link builders to know what a good link was. So I think we, as much as I hate to say it, we built some really horrible links. And when I've gone back through something, I've seen some of the links we built, and I'm just amazed that anybody would have done that. So I think we've gotten much more selective, and now, the clients are more selective too. We had a lot of clients years ago that they said, I want 50 links, and they really didn't care what you gave them. They just paid the bill. Now we have clients that question some links sometimes, which is helpful to us because, I can't read their minds, and I never know, what somebody's really going to like, or they might see something in it I didn't. But now I'm personally checking all the links that the link builders do. And a lot of the times, they're actually running it past me first. So we're working a lot more closely together, building fewer links. But I do think they're better. But, with them being better, it's much harder to get them.
Sure.
So that's all kind of slowed down.
But that also speaks to the fact that you're specialists in that area. I mean, if it makes you feel better, I suspect I've probably built more bad links than you have.
That does make me feel better. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great.
Sorry. So, in terms of the clients that you get, I see that in the marketplace that the demand for links, or at least calling them links, has slowed down. And do you see that pattern for LinkFish, or do you feel that you're still getting quite a lot of people understanding that it is really what eventually makes the difference?
Right. We actually do still get quite a few. We probably get maybe at least 10 good prospects a month. So it hasn't slowed down for us. It will slow down when anything big happens. And that's when, like, the clients go, oh my gosh, should I be doing this? I'm really worried, or can you pause your work, things like that. The last time I think Google started sending out the warnings to bloggers, there was like a 3-week period where we didn't get anybody. But then we keep getting people. And now, I usually, I go through the whole spiel about paid links. They're very risky, not sure your profile can handle it. We do some analysis, and we'll have people sometimes where I say, you are the last person in the world I would want to work with, because anything we do to your site in terms of paid links could hurt it. And they say, we'll do it anyway. So a lot of people have gotten, I think they think that there's really nothing safe to do anyway, and they might as well risk it. So we definitely have not seen a slowdown. We have seen a lot more people that want no-followed links, and if a lot of clients want to look at what we're thinking about doing before we do it. So, our model used to be that we would just kind of do the links, you give us the guidelines, we do them, you pay for them. And now it's a lot more, like I said, I work with the link builders, but I also work more with the clients. So lots of times, especially for new clients, I'm saying, here's a page that we think would be really good, and here's how we would approach it, this is what we would do, and then the client can approve it. So it's a little safer, I think, and it makes clients feel like they have more of a say in it rather than just getting a report.
Yeah. And because the client mix for LinkFish is, you're more direct with the owner operator of a site or a brand, rather than, you don't have as many agency style clients, I don't think.
We have just a couple of them.
Yeah, but you're not
Yeah, but not many.
you're not a service provider to agencies typically, and the
No.
demand tends to be, from what we see, the demand tends to be the end user realizes that the signal is still important, but the agency somehow is trying to steer a more um, cautious path.
Right, that's very true. And most of the time when we do work with an agency, the person that approaches me will say something like, "We've been doing everything, we just know we need links now." It's kind of like the last thing they do. They try everything else and then they come to us.
We've tried all the other stuff, but now we'd like to do the main thing that works, please.
Stuff that works.
Because they're not going to pay the invoice anymore.
Right.
So, and in terms of those clients that come to you, now that we're in a scenario that Google is obviously acting more against those links, both through the filter of Penguin and also through manual actions and through other things that we can't see. Do you think that caution, that worry that clients have about the physical buying of links is heightened nowadays, or is it that they realize that this is algorithmically a very difficult thing for Google to detect? How intelligent are they in their thought process in that way?
I think they do think that Google's going to have a hard time with it. And one main reason for that is because they can look at their competitors. And that's another common thing we hear, we don't want to buy links, but we know our competitors are doing it. So they can easily look and see that, this person who might have had 10 links last year is getting like 50 links a month now. But, that's probably not natural for a lot of clients. So I think people are, I don't want to say willing to risk it so much as I think they just kind of think everything they do is going to be risky in some way. And, they've thrown money at so many different things. People, spent thousands on paid ads that may not have converted. So I think they're still willing to try it, but I think they're nervous. But I think they're, nervous about just about anything. We still see people that have, other SEOs building like massive amount of sites that are going to be doorway pages, so they're still doing all kinds of risky things.
But that's also why they would want to come to a specialist, because the specialist
Right.
will be able to advise them, in a pragmatic way, what is worth the risk and what is not.
Right, exactly.
And in terms of the risk of things, it's obviously an area that we have a lot of interest in. Once you've got a profile, either before you start a particular contract with a client, do you feel it's important to get things as clean as possible to try and maintain that cleanness on an ongoing basis to gain the best success?
Right. That's a really tricky question because, yes, I think it is good to maintain a clean profile, but I also know that you don't have to have a clean profile to rank well, as I'm sure you know too.
Yeah.
You can, and especially a really big site, they can have loads and loads of crap links, and it's just not going to hurt them. But then you can have a site, that doesn't have many links, and they're all fantastic links, and they're not going to rank for anything. So ideally, I think it's good to get all of the crap out of your site, but I don't know. I mean, I used to wonder about that. Should you do a disavow? Should you clean things up unless you've been penalized? But then you got algorithmic issues. So I really don't know where I fall on that. I think ideally it would be good to have a clean profile, but if you haven't really been affected and you have some crappy links and you're still doing well, I don't know that I put the effort into it, because we've also, I'm sure you've seen this too, sites that do disavows or get rid of some links, they might fall in the rankings, and some of them can fall really low, and that's because those crappy links were actually helping them rank.
Yeah, but it's important, I suppose, to make sure there's some transparency. You know what's in your link profile. You know what's
That's
there.
Very true.
Because not knowing what's
Absolutely.
in there, just throwing more gasoline on the top of it is not a good idea.
That is very true, and especially with different. I mean, for like anchors, I think it's very important to pay attention to that, so you don't have like 95% of your anchors are one specific key phrase. And a lot of people really don't know how to look at their link profile, especially that come to us that say, I've got a great link profile, and we look at it and it's like 3 links, or they have no links, or they have 1,000 links, and a lot of them are spam. So I definitely think it's important to know what you have.
If only there was a tool or platform that allowed you to do so, huh?
That would be amazing if we had something like that.
I haven't mentioned Kaboo once.
Yes.
So in terms of the general trajectory we're headed in terms of links? Where do you see LinkFish as a business going, and the industry in general, the link building industry in general going?
I think it's just going to be harder, to get good links. And it's harder to find good sites that aren't completely spammed up. And we're part of that problem too, because, if you buy a link from a webmaster, then he's probably going to turn around and sell a billion links to somebody else. So I just think we need to be more selective and make sure that the links do make sense, so that if you looked at that link, you would think this is just an editorial link, or this link was added later because it's a great addition, just that the link makes sense and somebody's actually going to click on it. And I think that, somebody actually clicking on your link, I used to really not care that much about it, but I do think that's going to get more important.
And do you see that in terms of the types of links, the types of sites you have to engage with is going to change over time, in that you look at travel, you look at fashion, you look at the mommy blogs out there and those sort of things, that they are at some point will reach the saturation point that Google might say, well, they're not going to pass any value. They pass traffic, but they're not going to pass any value. Or
Right, absolutely. And beauty is especially, that's the main one that's, I've been kind of having a fit with lately after mommy blogs, because, it's everybody you look at now, they have a media kit. They, tell you they have 5,000 visitors a day. If you contact them about something, they say, oh, yes, that's my most popular page. I mean, that's what every single mommy blogger says to us. That is my most popular page, and that's going to cost you $5,000.
Yeah.
So I think at some point they're going to get cracked down on.
Sure. And also,
like you said, it's just saturated.
Well, the more it gets saturated as well, the more they ask for the particular involvement that you've got with them, the less the business case for actually doing that individual link. That balance,
right, exactly,
gets disturbed, doesn't it?
Yes.
I know that it's a long debated in the SEO community, but do you think that Google? I don't want to put a finite. Do you think that Google can ever replace links? Obviously they can at some point, but how do you think? How likely do you think it is that they're going to do that? And do you think that they will do that as a PR they will talk about that as a PR exercise before they actually stop relying on them as a main ranking signal?
Oh yeah, I think that's exactly what they'll do. Is they'll try to make us think that their links are going to be less important. But I mean, a link is how you get somewhere on the web, so I can't see that ever going away. And I always think they could make them a little less important, but I don't know. Even if they get less important, then people are going to figure out how to manipulate anything that becomes more important.
Yeah.
So I don't really have to worry about it, because we've had people say, how long can you sustain your company, because all you do is links. And we've done it for 10 years, and it seems to still be going very well. So I don't really think they can replace them. I think they may want us to think they can, though, because it is one of the easiest things to manipulate.
Yeah, I mean, the psychology of SEO and the marketing industry is a fairly fragile thing because of the huge problems that get caused when a client has problems, and being able to sort of
Right.
say we're dialing this down is as good as actually doing it in many cases. So
Right.
it'll be interesting, that I think. And
Definitely.
in terms of that particular, so either the PR sort of onslaught that we see from Google, or even the actual actions that they do, do you anticipate them? Because we saw them introduce Penguin, we saw them start to formalize the manual action process. We saw them go through various waves of that. We even saw them act against individual sort of techniques, advertorials, etc., etc. Do you have any insight or any expectation of what you would bet on as being the next sort of move for Google in that regard?
Yeah, I think, it goes back to the last question. I think PR and fear mongering is going to be one main thing, because they can say we're going to be sending out a lot of warnings, stuff like that. And I think they'll go after specific oversaturated niches also, like the beauty industry or travel. But they're a big move with, saying we're going to penalize your site because you've sold some links, basically, or you have some bad links coming out of your site. That is pretty bold, and that really shook people up. So we approach people now. Maybe 1 out of every 20 people will say, no, I can't do this because Google, says it's illegal. That's what everybody thinks, or I'm going to get banned and stuff like that. So I think they'll probably, maybe kind of try to stick it to the sites that are linking out in some way.
Okay.
Because, people are still they'll still do it, but people are going to want more money. We even have people now saying that I'll do a no follow link for this amount, but if you don't want it to be no followed, it's going to be double because of the risk.
Wow. Okay. I mean, we have seen Google do some announcements in recent times around disclosure of payments or incentives to
Right.
link, and we have seen them in the past. You and I, when I was running a link building agency, both saw in the finance industry that they went through the finance industry to try and put some fear into the bloggers in the finance industry, and there was a lot of chatter in private SEO style Facebook groups, etc.
Right.
That was saying, okay, we're going to stop doing any of this, and it was obviously much more the PR, the fear of PR rather than the actual action that Google could take.
Right, exactly.
And in terms of, you have a slightly different, from what I understand, you have a slightly different structure to the way that most link building agencies work. And do you think that anybody can be taught to do the job of link building who doesn't necessarily have all of the understanding and the background in the industry?
I do, and I think to give you an example, one of my best employees is, much older than I am. I don't want to say how old, but his background was in management and textiles. And it's just amazing to me to have somebody that could, came from a background similar to like my mother's background in HR management for a company like that, and they can build links. And just being able to take somebody has not really ever been that internet savvy and have them do an amazing job, I think to me, it's proof, that anybody can do this. I don't necessarily think anybody has the capacity to, run a link campaign though, or do the analysis or, do audits or anything like that. But in terms of being able to look at a good site and find a contact email and reach out, I think anybody can do that. I think that I like to not have SEO types doing this because, in my opinion, they look at a site in terms of, how an actual user would look at it. They're not getting focused on the metrics, really. They're not saying, oh, well, this site's, got this in its background. They just kind of look at it like, would I click on this link? And that's how we've always approached it, and it's always worked very well for us.
Yeah, and I can completely see that. Yeah. Otherwise, you end up you fall back on the procedure rather than and what a user would actually do rather than falling back on the opinion of somebody who feels that they're ingrained in the SEO industry.
Right, exactly. And we've had some people who are very fascinated by SEO that worked for us, and they would ask a lot of questions and get more into it, which I really liked. So, but then it's like their link building performance really kind of slowed down because they were overthinking everything. And they couldn't just make a quick decision. They would, look at a site and it would take hours, and they would ask all these questions about it. Whereas, at this point I can look at a site and say, yeah, that's a good one or a bad one. And most of my guys can too. So sometimes we did have that as a problem. So a lot of those people just, it's great that they're SEOs now and they're doing really well. They just probably weren't really suited our model.
Right, okay.
That makes sense.
And in terms of actually finding somebody to do that job, what's the process for recruitment for you? How do you find somebody that isn't going to apply for the job knowing that it's a link? Do you actually ask for link builders? What is that?
We did once. We were really lucky when we started because all of our employees, it was just word of mouth. So, it was just like one of our first employees was Pete Attia, and he's pretty well known SEO now, and he's just somebody that my husband knew. And he started working for us, and then he knew a bunch of people, and it, just kind of became like that. And then, I put up a few ads. I think I used Craigslist and found actually somebody that we still have who's amazing. But mostly I would word it as, somebody that needs to do outreach and be able to write well and things like that. Because in our area, nobody really knows what link building is. And I didn't really want to try to hire an SEO because we don't have a lot of those here either, and it's not an SEO position. But I haven't hired anybody in the last 2 years, so that's pretty good to me that everybody with us has been here for at least 3 years. But
Yeah.
when we did, when I would go through the periods of interviewing and things like that, I just wanted to get people in the door and then just kind of see how I felt about them. Like, did they have really good communication skills? So if we had people that came in and, they're 15 minutes late, they couldn't make eye contact with me, that just was not somebody that I thought was going to do a good job. Because when we're having to reach out to webmasters, and some of them are very rude, or some of them are very pleasant, but you have to know how to really interact with them. And, in my opinion, if you can't really look at somebody that's talking to you, that you're not going to be able to be a great communicator.
Okay.
So that, things like that. Jay used to like to hire people who were bartenders because he said, they're great at problem solving and multitasking and talking to people. And some of our best link builders had worked in restaurants and as bartenders.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And in terms of if you get those people in and that they come from a bartending background, or they come from an administrative background, or some other non-related, non-marketing, how do you go about training them to get to the level?
Basically, what we've always done is, or whoever has been training, will just kind of sit with a new person for a little bit, just kind of briefly explain what we do and say something like, here's a client we're working with, look at their site. Now go out and find, 20 sites that you think would be really good places where you would expect to see a link, and you click on it to go to this site. And then they give us a list, and we look at it, and we say, well, no, you wouldn't want this site because of this, or yes, this is good. And it happens pretty quickly. And then once they have something, we say, go find some contact info and reach out. And here's an example of an outreach email we would send. Just kind of make it your own. And, they get a reply, and they come back to us, and we just walk them through it. So it's very, like training by doing it.
Okay.
So we don't have them read a bunch of books, or, I don't send out like 9,000 of my articles and say, go read all of these, or anybody else's. We just, say, get moving, basically, just get started. And that has worked really well, because as soon as somebody gets that first link, it's like they're hooked.
Yeah.
And, they may get bored later.
Yeah.
But when I remember when I got my first link, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Somebody has done what I wanted. And I'm thrilled with that in any situation. Somebody's listening, and they do what you want. So
Yep.
that's generally just how we've trained.
I remember my first outreach reply as well. So, yep.
Was it good or bad?
It was good. No, it was. I thought it was going to be very easy from there on in, and then 2 years later, I've got 200 people in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and we're doing this at scale. So yeah,
right.
It wasn't quite as easy as you hoped. So, in terms of the clients that you get, what are the main challenges that you see from that? I know that you've often worked in niches where the expectation of the client is sometimes bordering on the unrealistic. And how do you see that change recently? Have you seen, does that continue to be a challenge for you?
No, they're all still unrealistic. They're all wonderful, though, of course. But I think it's, everybody thinks their site is amazing and that everybody wants to link to it. I think I've got one client now who came to me and was like, nobody's going to link to my site, because it's boring. But most people think, yeah, everybody wants to link to me because what I do is better than anybody else. So it's challenging in that regard. So, when we might have a client who starts and in one day they're emailing like, where are my links? Have you gotten any links? And I say, well, no, we're looking at the site. We're trying to, do some discovery. We're trying to just get a feel for the site and go through it. And, there's an expectation that, like you were saying earlier, that it's really easy to build a link. And then if you build one link, they think it's easy for you to build the next 10, in the next couple of days. There are also a lot of challenges with, I like working with like tricky industries, I think, or some unusual industries. But, sometimes you get one that, you might approach a webmaster and they say, there's no way I would link to a site like that. And it's kind of unexpected because it's not something I would think is that icky or something. But webmasters are getting pickier too. So that's a big challenge. But we also have a lot of clients who will give us very unrealistic metrics to follow, I think. And not, they might look at, say, domain authority and they say, only want 50 and above. And for their industry, it's just really not going to happen. And that's, it's hard anyway. And even if we find really great sites like that, lots of times we might not get responses. So, it's just, I guess that's the big challenge. They just kind of expect that everything's going to be easy for us.
Yes.
And it's just not.
Been
Takes a
there.
lot of work.
Yeah. Um, and in terms of, I mean, there's a general sort of recurring theme on certainly agencies I talk to that they've moved away from engaging with bloggers particularly, and they've started to move towards media lists and coverage and just trying to do stuff with outlets and actual media rather than engaging with the bloggers in that particular niche. And
Right.
do you have any response that you would say to that accusation that actual blogger engagement doesn't really work anymore?
Well, it works for us, and we're doing the same approximate volume of links per month that we were doing several years ago. We haven't changed like the way we approach people or the types of people we approach, and we don't use media lists. We don't, use like PR outlets or anything like that. So it may not work for them. It definitely works for us, but we also are not doing something at like a massive scale. So we're not just pumping out 1,000 emails. We're actually looking at bloggers and looking at what they do and, judging, is it likely these people are going to respond to us? So it's definitely still working for us.
And in terms of the general SEO marketing for a typical client of yours, are they doing some other stuff? Are they doing PR, themselves, or is it pure? Is it pretty much your work and some internal bits and bats that they're actually going on, or are you just part of the wider strategy?
I think it's both, and some people don't even share that with us, and that's been one of my frustrations because we do have people treat us like, we are the hired help, obviously, but we're the outsiders. They might have, they have an SEO team inside, but we're the ones outside because nobody wants to build links. So when I ask for things, it's like they think I'm being invasive when I'm just thinking, I'd like to know what else is going on. Some of them will respond and tell you, and some of them don't. And, some people use us, and we've had clients that have used us and had like 3 other companies building links at the same time, and we didn't know about it.
Another reason why you need to know what's in your link profile. Didn't mention.
That's right. That's what I do to see what's going on.
and you see that the blogger engagement, which is pretty much most of what you do, I believe, you're still seeing that moving the needle. You're still seeing that providing results.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, me too. Good.
Good.
And in terms of the sort of rise of digital PR, how important is coverage? And I mean, by coverage, I mean sort of vague term to say, okay, well, we may not have got a link from here, but we got a mention. We may have got a link from here and it's no followed. We may have got, rather than just the link that passes value, how much do you put stall on the total coverage that is seen for that particular client?
I think it's good, and I think it's important, but in terms of convincing clients of that, I'm not always successful. And because, we charge by the link because that's just the model we chose, and it works very well because the clients pay for what they get. So, I can't exactly go to somebody and say, we got you a mention, and here, give me this much money. They're not going to do that, definitely. So we don't tend to focus as much on that. But, we do advise people, things like that, anything that has, somebody getting eyes on you, I think is really good.
And
I think it's very important.
Is that also important, not necessarily from a ranking signal point of view, but also from this is what natural activity looks like. This is what a successful site would look like. So therefore, it's important to have all aspects of.
Right. If that weren't the case, then you wouldn't have people saying, monitor your mentions and then go try to get a link, because it's very natural to mention a company or a person and not link to them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of the sort of the rise of digital PR, etc., how much do you see clients buy? We have a number of people that I've talked to recently where they say, well, we actually don't physically do any link building whatsoever. What we do is we put out fantastic content, or we produce fantastic content, and we wait for things to naturally happen. And how much do you see that things don't naturally happen to the level that moves the needle as much as people think it might?
Well, obviously I'm focused on links and not that, but whenever I've asked anybody who says things like, well, we don't We don't build links. We just let it happen naturally. Nobody can ever show me an example.
Hmm.
So as far as being a reality, if it is, it's nothing I've ever seen. And I'm not saying it's not, because I don't see every site, obviously. But for most people, I mean, if they do have amazing content, then yeah, I'm sure it could happen. And we have some clients who naturally get tons and tons of links a month, and they just use us to kind of flesh things out in a specific area. So I know that does happen, but for the most part, I don't see it. I mean, you're not going to get like some local guy who has a nice little food blog who's just automatically going to get a ton of links, from just some PR, as far as I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a reality. I think that it's a good thing to say, and it plays very well to say don't build links.
Well, and in many cases, it's traditional marketing. It's telling people that you exist.
Right.
It may be regarded by some people as just being digital PR or something else, but in other cases, it is link building. There is an outcome from it that is measurable.
Right, and I don't really have a problem with, anybody that thinks that way. I have a problem when they're constantly acting like, by building links, you're doing something horrible. You're ruining the web.
Yes,
I think there's room for everybody. So.
Yeah. I've always loved the rebuttal where people say, well, we can't do that because it's illegal. Well,
right, we get that a lot.
Yes, yeah.
You're going to go to jail.
You're going to go to Google jail.
Google jail.
So in terms of the actual engagement with site owners, do you have any tips on all of the work that you do to try and get people to actually respond and pay attention to you? Is it?
Yeah, one thing is to not call them by the wrong name, which is always my pet peeve. And don't, say hello, sir, which also drives me nuts. I think it's important to figure out who you're talking to, and not just not just to get that name so you can say, hi, Betty, I've read your great site. But, you need to look at their site and see what they do. And plenty of sites will say, do not contact me if you want a link. And I mean, I'd love it to see that. So I go, okay, I'm not going to bother this Bill guy because he does not link out. But, a lot of people don't read things like that, and our guys are guilty of that, and I've been guilty of it too. You just find something good and you don't really do the research. And if you're approaching somebody who says, don't approach me, that's obviously a bad idea. And I like to, use their name, try to figure out something about them. Don't, just say, I love your amazing site. We still get link requests like that too. Your site is amazing, Julie. Can you please give me a link? That just doesn't really work. So I don't really like to start out automatically by trying to get something from somebody. But, as much as I say that, that technique really works well for a few of the industries we work in. So we have a couple of link builders who basically will just say, hey, I've been looking at your site. I've got this client, who would like to put a link on your page. Are you interested? And then they respond back, and then that moves forward. Sure. So I like it to be personal, but some people are just like, they get an email and, yep, I'll do it.
I'm also slightly amused by the idea that you're outreaching to people called Betty or Bill. But just random names we came up with, that's fine by me. And in terms of those industries that are particularly tough to work in, I know you've worked in some industries that are that I certainly would never have touched when I was doing link building, or at least tried to avoid as much as possible. Right. What do you feel is the toughest sort of area that you've had to get involved in?
Payday loans was a bear. I mean, that was a really, really hard one because we were subject to a lot of abuse too. Not just people saying, no, don't contact me again, but people, you ruined my mom's life, things like that. And the stuff that these people, payday loans are the scourge of the earth.
I think possibly we were doing payday loans at the same time. So I think we were both doing payday loans at the same time.
We were both ruining the web.
I remember the threats.
Yeah. We got that. I mean, I've never had our people threatened like that. I felt really bad, and I would say, they don't know you. They don't know where you live. They're not going to really do anything bad to you. Yeah. But that was rough, and that's been ages ago. But a few years back, we worked with a legal firm representing drug makers, like prescription drug makers, and that was actually even ickier. That was just a really, really tough one. So after that, we haven't done any work other than maybe consulting with the legal industry.
Right. And the flip side of that, I mean, there is no easy industry, but what do you think? If you were to get a client through the door in a particular niche, what would be the niche that would make you happiest to see?
I really like the home furnishings and design clients because I don't know, I just find that stuff fascinating, and there's so many good blogs about it. That tends to be pretty easy for us, but finance, different types of finance has always been very, very well received.
Hmm.
But I'd say really, to be honest, the easiest industry I wouldn't even say it's an industry. It would be a brand that's really well known and respected. So when we've had a brand that's, people recognize and it's a trusted brand and they like it, then they're much more willing to link, versus you get a brand and people go, oh my God, they charged my grandma's credit card for 5 months and, stuff like that, which we've had happen too.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So we've got a couple of. This is the first slide deck I think I've ever done that didn't include a picture of a cat in it at some point. So I've managed to find a picture of your cat and put it on there.
Oh, he looks so handsome.
Yeah. Is that a normal pose for your cat?
Yes, Dashwood. Yes, yes. He's very pompous.
Fits in well. So we've got a couple of questions from people who have been attending, if that's okay, before we finish up.
Of course.
So one question we had is, what's your opinion on buying companies from the same niche and redirecting stuff into their core site? Are they likely to be transmitting that power well, or did you see that as being a successful way of being able to deal with the acquisition of link equity?
Right. I mean, a lot of people do it, and we've dealt with a lot of sites that have done it. I've never been involved in, actively doing that. The main involvement I've had is when we've had some people say, I'm thinking of buying these domains, and 301ing them, and can you check the link profiles? And, that was my main concern. If the link profiles for those sites were good, then I didn't have a problem with it. But I wouldn't, I guess it can work if you have a ton of them, but I wouldn't get 100 and do that, although I know people do get quite a few.
And one other question slightly related to that in terms of, do you think a 301 redirect can actually hold down your rankings if you were, how much does a 301 play in the ability to rank and also the ability to stay out of trouble?
Oh, that is a very good question, because that's one of those things, again, I hate to say I have no evidence on that for an opinion, but I really don't, because it's just nothing I've ever tested or had any big data on. I mean, I would assume if a site was really good and at 301 redirected, then that would be beneficial. I would assume that if it had, tons of crap links and you redirected it, that could be bad. But as far as, actually testing it to see, I don't know, somebody else will probably have a much better answer. You might have a better answer for that, Paul, actually, than me. Maybe.
I would find that very likely.
Yeah, I've just never seen evidence.
Well, I don't think you can't see evidence. I've seen plenty of sites that have 301 redirected to escape the poor links they had on a previous domain, or to try and maintain rankings whilst they sorted things out, and that seemed to work pretty well for quite a long time. I don't believe that the risk passes through the 301 in the same way that the reward does, but doesn't seem like a good idea long term to me.
Right. Yeah, that would be my concern, is long term. And like you said, I mean, if the rank, had good stuff, then that would be fine, I think. But I would worry, if anything bad could get passed through. But you would know better.
Or Google could change that any day, couldn't they?
Right.
A couple of quick questions. What would you consider your polite way of asking for a link would be? How do you do a polite way of asking for a link?
That's a wonderful question. And luckily all my guys are Southern, so they're very polite anyway. We basically just say, something like, would you be interested in working with us to help us out? So we do a lot of phrasing, to do that whole, and the Brits are good at that too, like, please, would you do me a huge favor? And that seems to work. We don't just say, give me a link. We don't, we're never ever rude, even when people are rude to us. But that's our general approach, is we think this would be helpful to our client, and we think it might be helpful to your readers. You have to be able to back that up, of course. So, you're not going to say, I think it would be helpful for your readers on this makeup blog to know how they can use a payday loan to buy more makeup. That's not really helpful. So, just you have to be able to, like I said, back it up, and it actually is going to help. You think that it might benefit the site, it might be a good additional resource. People tend to like that kind of language.
Okay. And I think the politeness, the Southern politeness, does certainly help.
Yes.
You've never been polite to me, but we won't mention that. So do you value mentions without a link? How do you find mentions without a link? I appreciate the clients sometimes don't want to pay for that, but do you see that as a positive result when you're out?
I think it's a positive result, definitely. And we have had a couple of clients who did pay us for that, actually, now that I think about it. But that was, to get a mention, not to go after mentions that were already there and do anything with them. But I mean, if somebody positively references you, I think that's a great thing. You might not get a link out of it, but, I mean, if I read something and somebody said, wow, Julie's webinar was amazing, and they didn't link, I wouldn't care. I'd be like, oh, thank you, that's awesome.
Because the natural user from there would go and Google Julie Joyce and click on one of the links from there, isn't it? So.
Exactly. Something, I like that positive sentiment. So I think it's important. But, selling clients on it, I mean, I guess it would depend on how you do charge a client too. So if you had like a package price or for consulting and you could say, we got these 10 mentions, that might be really great. It's just not anything that we're set up to do, really.
Sure. Final question. I think we only have one more, and this isn't a question planted by me to mention Kaboo, but it's really not. Because you do a lot of things very manually in the way that you do the sort of looking for sites and the outreach of. Are there any tools or services that you find that you've relied on or enjoyed using or find some efficiencies from using that help your link builders do their job?
Yeah, I don't actually, this sounds so bad, like I'm such a mean person, but I don't let my guys use any of the tools that I use like this because, again, I don't want them to rely on them, but I do use them. And I now that you mentioned it, I do use Peak because I think that, from Kaboo, I think that actually it does a lot of what I would do anyway. And I remember telling you that when I first started looking at it. It just kind of, it's like exactly what I do, but it presents it in a different way. So when I do a lot of discovery, I might use it, I still do a lot of manual stuff, but I use that. And definitely for my audits, I use Kaboo and pull in all the Majestic data and everything else. And Majestic is something I use. We have clients that want Majestic metrics reported on, and we have some that want, Open Site Explorer. So I use both of those tools as well.
Okay. Definitely wasn't planted just to hear you say Kaboo in your accent.
But it's true.
I enjoyed greatly. Final question. So when is a good time to embrace the no-follow? Perhaps a site with a low trust score or low profile?
What a great question. Yes. But honestly, I guess if it's a great site in terms of you think it's a good site, it's a great fit, and you think it's going to send traffic, but it has really low metrics, I might do a no-follow. Just like what you said, but I wouldn't just look at a no-follow as a way to get some traffic and have something on a really crappy, irrelevant site, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. That makes perfect sense. Okay.
Or, I embrace the no-follow lots of times if a webmaster has a great site and they say that's the only way I'm getting a link. And I say, yes, thank you.
Yes, I'll take what you're giving.
I'll do that.
Okay, well, that pretty much gets us to the end of our hour. That is fantastic. I'd like to extend a huge thank you for coming on and talking to us about a subject that you always described as boring, but is something that both you and I and lots of other people have enjoyed doing and continue to enjoy doing throughout. From calq, this webinar is recorded, so we'll be putting this up with a blog post in about 24 hours time. I know that if there are any questions that anybody has after this, I'm sure you'll be more than happy to help us out by answering those either in the calq blog post or online elsewhere.
Oh, absolutely.
But always great to talk to you, Julie. Thank you for your time.
Likewise.
And I
Thank
promise
you.
next time I will do better at laying out my slides and working out how to share my screen properly.
You did a great job.
I'm in my 40s. This technology stuff doesn't work for me anymore.
Hard for you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for attending, and look forward to seeing you next time we do another webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.